We have one translation before us and we all are reading the same thing. It'd be a little bit better of a unified voice as we look at this. Psalm 92. Let us begin together. It is good to give thanks to the Lord and sing praises to your name, O Most High, to declare your loving kindness in the morning and your faithfulness every night, and on an instrument of 10 strings, on the lute and on the harp with harmonious sound. For you, Lord, have made me glad through your work. I will triumph in the works of your hands. O Lord, how great are your works! Your thoughts are very deep. A senseless man does not know, nor does a fool understand this. When the wicked spring up like grass, and when all the workers of iniquity flourish, it is that they may be destroyed forever. But you, Lord, are on high forevermore. For behold your enemies, O Lord, for behold your enemies shall perish. All the workers of iniquity shall be scattered. But my horn you have exalted like a wild ox. I have been anointed with fresh oil. My eye also has seen my desire on my enemies. My ears hear my desire on the wicked who rise up against me. The righteous shall flourish like a palm tree. He shall grow like a cedar in Lebanon. Those who are planted in the house of the Lord shall flourish in the courts of our God. They shall still bear fruit in old age. They shall be fresh and flourishing, to declare that the Lord is upright. He is my rock, and there is no unrighteousness in him. Thank God for his word. If I spend 4 minutes on each verse tonight, that's the next hour. You know, I really don't think we give too much thanksgiving. And just in challenging myself through the word this morning, I realized, boy, I need to do a better job at giving thanks and uplifting God, but showing that thanksgiving even towards others. I think praise is so important. And especially when we're thinking to praise and our worship to God, I think it's so valid. Our vertical thanksgiving makes our horizontal thanksgiving much easier. If we get this one going in the right direction, then I believe this one will begin to flow out of our lives a whole lot more. So we begin, it is a good thing. It is a good thing to give thanks to the Lord. It is good. It is beneficial. It is profitable. It is worthy. It is appropriate. How can praising God not be a good thing? You know, anybody can give praise to God because he's worthy of it. And the praise is about him, and it's not about us. So when we think about praise and giving thanks to God, yes, it is a good thing. And it goes on to say, and to sing praises to your name, O Most High. Music is one of the best ways. I didn't say it was the only way, or it is the best above everything. But music is just one of the best ways, I think, to exalt our Lord Jehovah. There's something about music that captures our heart, our mind, like nothing else can. And here he offers us our praise, singing praise to the name of God, the Exalted One. You know, we think of music in one way of parts and harmony, and we'll get a little bit into that. But music in the Bible times, and you know, Kim's the expert on music. She studied it. She graduated from music, and she has all those wonderful degrees. But music biblically was more of a chant, was not harmonious or whatever. And I was reading a quote I think it was actually this morning from St. Augustine. And the first time he recognized, and he was writing, first time they recognized this inflection and difference in voice and tone, he was like, whoa, wait a minute, that's not what I'm used to. But yet, in that, it began to realize, wow, that is actually good, because it began to show the emotion and the expression of our heart and of our worship to God. And the psalmist begins to list what it is that he was so thankful to even experience in his own life. And then from that, begin to, I believe, offer this thanksgiving to God. It's good to give thanks. What else? To declare your loving kindness in the morning and your faithfulness every night. Loving kindness, this beauty, this favor, this goodness. You see, this character really invites us to him. This loving kindness draws us unto God. It doesn't push us away, but love draws. When we see this demonstration, why is it that the gospel becomes, I believe, an attractive thing? Is because God loved so much that he gave. The gospel is God loving us first. And because he loved us first, then we can love him in return. It is a beautiful thing. So I declare your loving kindness in the morning. And at the end of the day, I can see your faithfulness has led me all the way. That faithfulness of God and understanding that faithfulness really is also demonstrated in this. The wording there, it means your stability, your fidelity, and your firmness. It really is a sense of security. Your faithfulness, knowing that, you know what, in God, I can just rest because you are keeping me. Aren't you glad for the keeping grace of God? That it's not just something of a saving grace, and that's good, but yet God just keeps us in his faithfulness every morning and every evening. God is faithful. God is loving. That doesn't change. Wow, what an awesome God we serve, right? It is a good thing. It is a good thing to give praise to our God, to declare his loving kindness and his faithfulness. He goes on here to exercise on an instrument of 10 strings. I had a guy tell us one time, I remember growing up, he says, we all have 10 strings. And he's referring to our hands, and he was expressing the ability to, of using our hands and clapping, etc., an instrument of praise to God. Well, I don't necessarily think it was maybe referring to our hands. But here it is, this expression, the passion to make an instrument express your heart of worship and praise. People can learn music. This may be unpopular, but people can learn music. They can learn scales. They can learn key changes and different chord progression. They can know all the techniques. And there's people in here that know music. And that's good. You need to know that stuff. I'm not saying it's not beneficial or it's not helpful. But there's something about making an instrument sing. People can do all kinds of technical things on a trumpet. And they can do fancy, tonguing, double and triple tonguing, and do all kinds, and I'm using the trumpet because I do play one, and and all that. But man, there's something about making the trumpet just sing, because you get lost in the music and what you're playing, and it just begins to flow, and it becomes more than a technical thing. It becomes an instrument of worship. Music has that ability to just do that. But as he goes on here, and it's an instrument of 10 strings, and he refers to the lute or on the harp, and a harp primitively probably didn't have many strings, but we see harps today, and they're huge, and there's multiple strings. You know how many strings are on a piano? I don't know either. But a lot of the strings, there's 3 strings per some of the notes, and some of the lower ones don't. But I mean, there's many strings. So look at it. Somebody is on their phone. I'm not saying who, but somebody is on their phone Googling how many strings are on a piano. And we'll get the information in a bit. But when we think about music, and he goes here and he describes it this: on an instrument of 10 strings, on a lute or harp, with harmonious sound. Together. Working, the music needs to really be in harmony, not discord. Could you imagine if you had a bunch of instruments playing their own tempo and their own whatever you want to describe it at? And I mean, you talk about, it'd be pretty chaotic and all of that. And I remember going to band practice and in the beginning part of the band, you had all the instruments, and everybody was playing something different. They were all warming up, and they were all doing scales, and different timing and different start, whatever. I mean, you talk about sound like chaotic mess. Finally, the instructor would say, "Okay," and we instantly got quiet, and then we started working it together. And the difference, when you can look at a composition of music and there's notes everywhere and the scores are there, and yet when you put it together and they're playing together and they're playing the right timing and the instruments are tuned together, harmonious sound. It's balanced. It's not one part overbearing of another, but it's complementary one another. And it's beautiful. And he says using it. God isn't sanctioning here an instrument, but he is declaring that by means of which the soul is captured and the heart is tuned heavenward. Think about it. What moves you when you hear music? You can take the youngest of child, and they hear music, and wow, they have a way of responding to music. We had children stand in front of the TV screen as a Gaither homecoming praise was going on, and they're standing there and they're with their hands and they're praising, they're worshiping. They feel it. You with me? They're connected by that. So what is it that moves us when we hear music? And what begins to move us directs us to what the music is focused upon. Is our heart caught up in praise with our worship and with our music? Is it God-honoring? I know, that may not be popular. People have all different styles and likes of music, and I recognize, music is a universal language, but I do believe our music needs to be God-focused. Our music needs to be honoring to Him and exalting God. Why? Why do we declare His loving kindness? Why do we exalt Him? Because the psalmist says, "For you, Lord, have made me glad." You have put the song in my heart. You have changed me. You have lifted the heaviness of the soul and of the spirit. You have raised me up, and through that I can extol my praise and my worship to you. You see, God is the element of change, not our own personal inspired change. God is. If God's at work in our life, should it not then be our praise that comes from us, from our lips, and saying, "Yes, Lord, I lift you up. I want to magnify you." Look around and see God's work and handiwork in our life. Can you see His hand involved in you? Can you see the fact that God has been at work in your life? Wow, I marvel at that. And I've just recently been reminded to think that, wow, God, you are doing something bigger and greater than me. And I love it. Let it be so. May your hand be seen. May your name be praised. But look around in the beauty of the creation. Aren't the trees wonderful? There aren't no leaves on them. It has its own beauty. The creation, and it will not be too long until the barren leaves or the sticks and the stems of the trees and all of that, the branches will be budding forth again anew. And we'll marvel at the freshness and the fresh green grass and the flowers springing from the earth where once was nothing but snow, beautiful snow, wonderful snow. It's great. I will be thankful. I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise will continually be in my mouth. My point is, look at the beauty of God's creation. Can you not see God's handiwork and his order to it? God's investment in me. You can say that. God's investment in me. Lord, you have made me glad through your work. Not mine, but your work. And thus I will triumph. That's a word of victory. I will triumph in the works of your hands. I'll be an overcomer. And I think recognizing God's hand working for my good ought to again just be one more reason in which we should be thanking God, right? Verse 1, it is a good thing to give thanks to the Lord. So let's look at the next two verses together, verse 5 and verse 6. O Lord, how great are your works, your thoughts are very deep. A senseless man does not know, nor does a fool understand this. How great is our God? That's a course, newer course. We ought to learn it. Someone needs to sing it. How great is our God? Truly he is. There's an old song, a hymn, great song, that talks about how great God is, how great thou art. That's a beautiful song. But not only the fact is how great is our God, but how good is our God. And he really is. Let me read from Romans chapter 11. Excuse me. When we think about how great are his works and his thoughts are very deep, listen to what Paul wrote. He says, For who has known the mind of the Lord, or who has been his counselor? Or who has given to him, and it shall be repaid to him? Did I start at the wrong verse? No, I didn't. Let's go back to verse 33. That's what I wanted. Oh, the depth, there it is. Oh, the depth of the riches, both of the wisdom and the knowledge of God. How unsearchable are his judgments and his ways past finding out. Wow. Oh, the depth of his riches. His understanding, his judgments are unsearchable. There's a song in our hymn book. Do you remember singing it? Oh, the unsearchable riches of Christ. Truly, they are so deep and vast. The greatness of God should inspire our hearts to worship him with all that is within us. For the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. The ignorant or the unlearned refuses to see the mighty hand of God in creation and his direct involvement in his life, and to declare that God is nothing or minimal and is just a myth or a figment of belief shows the arrogance and the foolishness of man. For the senseless, rude, arrogant man does not know, nor does the fool understand this. How small man really is compared to how great God is. What a huge contrast. Can you see this? What a huge, he's talking about, God, you're so great. And what is man? That God is mindful of him, and the Son of Man that you should visit him, for you've made him just a little lower than the angels. And he's referring to the creation of man and all of that. But yet we are so small compared to the greatness of God. Wow, already in these first 6 verses, we can see the importance of giving thanks to God. Sometimes I think we need to be reminded why I should be filled with thanksgiving. The psalmist begins to present some reasons why here in the latter portion of this psalm. God is still great. And it's awesome to be on God's side. And faith in God is not bound by the circumstantial evidence, but by the unfailing truth of who God is. So let's continue on. Look at verse number 7. When the wicked spring up like grass, and when all the workers of iniquity flourish, it is that they may be destroyed forever. I think one thing we need to be reminded of ourselves, just to be realizing, wickedness will never last eternally. Even if it appears to be some increase in its influence, when I think about it and I think about evil and wickedness within the political schemes of man and our own form of government, I want to just cringe. When I see wickedness being paraded socially, and it's becoming the accepted norm, but yet it's so anti-God. And it just seems like, where's the church? Where's the believers? And whether the elections went the way we like them or whether they didn't go the way we like them. And yes, I'm disappointed that Ohio made some decisions that they did in light of the unborn and of the sanctity of life. But I want us to realize whatever they think they can gain now doesn't mean like they have won. But I know sometimes I'm thinking, man, is there anybody that's going to stand up for truth? Is anybody going to declare this is God and we need the Lord? The justice of God would never promote or prolong iniquity. It will be stopped. And Paul wrote to the Galatians and he says, do not be deceived. God is not mocked. However it may appear to us and in our life, how it seems like wickedness is flourishing and how evil seems to be having all the topic and they're parading their fill. I want you to understand there will be a day wickedness will come to a halt. And that authority of justice of God will bring all of it into His divine authority, and it will not stand. It will not stand. But you, Lord, verse 8, are on high forevermore. This is really a direct contrast to verse number 7. Think about it. The wicked, they're destined to be destroyed. They are not going to stand. But God, you're not going to fail. God does not fail. He cannot fail. He is supreme. He cannot increase, because if He could increase, then He would not be God. God is the ultimate supreme. Jehovah, you are eternal. There is no ending in you. Can you not sense the hope and the inspiration God is granting here to the psalmist? There was another psalm that talks about when I see evil, increasing, and then he says it lasts as long until I get to the house of the Lord. You know why? Because it was in the house of the Lord he was reminded who God is. And I challenge us tonight, even when we see wickedness, and it's around us, we can't ignore it, it's there. We see it happening and things that are said and how it all is paraded forth. But I want you to realize, God is not going to be mocked, nor is He going to be usurped. God is still on the throne, amen? And I think if we can just be reminded again as we come into God's house and says, yes, Lord, you are forever. I sense the hope. I sense the hope and the inspiration that God has given here to the psalmist. Yeah, the wicked are going to face their doom, but Lord, you're not going to fail. You're on the throne forever. You are on high forever. You will not be usurped. And I think this is a very important reminder to us why it is that we should give thanks to the Lord, because he rules supreme. Verse 9, for behold your enemies, O Lord, for behold your enemies shall perish. All the workers of iniquity shall be scattered. The enemies of God are the lovers of this present world, and this world system has set its course in opposition to God. And the prince of the power of the air is ruling of darkness, and the church stands in direct opposition to the world, right? When I was thinking about this verse about the enemies of the Lord, they're not going to stand, I was reminded of the Psalm 1. I was reminded of the fact that blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the ungodly, nor does he sit in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in what? The law of the Lord, and in his law he meditates day and night. And he goes on to describe, he is like a tree planted by the rivers of water that bringeth forth its fruit in its season. His leaf shall not wither, and whatsoever he does shall prosper. The ungodly don't stand. They're like chaff which the wind blows away. But it's the righteous that stand in the day of judgment. It is the godly that remains. The nation of Israel has been scattered abroad because of their rebellion against God. When they would disobey God and they would go their own way, God would allow the enemies to come in and plunder them and scatter them, and they were on the run. They were taken captive. They were held captive in all that it is. And when you see that, when you see the fact of how this would come about to those that are the enemies against God, you and I are no different. We can't fight against God. We can't go against his word. We can't go against his spirit. We can't stand. We'll be scattered. We will perish with the enemies of the Lord. But he goes on, he says, but my horn you have exalted like a wild ox. If you have a King James Version Bible, it says like a unicorn. Right there it is. It's probably referred to maybe even to a rhinoceros, the one horn, you know what they look like. But what is he saying? You know what happens. You know, those big water buffalo, their horns and the things that they do. As they come in and they charge, what do? They raise their head, right? They throw their horn up, or their antler, or whatever you want to call it. And they do that because it was scattering or throwing the enemy. And he says, But my horn, Lord, you have exalted like a wild ox. I have been anointed with fresh oil. We read this from the word. It says, we are hard pressed on every side, yet not crushed. We are perplexed, but not in despair. We are persecuted, but not forsaken. Struck down, but not destroyed. Always carrying about in the body the dying of the Lord Jesus, that the life of Jesus also may be manifested in our body. Think about the things that come against us and all that, but yet we find this restoration. The horn was definitely a thought of as a defensive, and really the fresh oil here is symbolic of this, of like the idea of a fresh start of a new day. It doesn't necessarily refer to a spiritual anointing, but it was more like the idea of a health, of a fragrance. And he was like, you have exalted me. You have given me a freshness to face the day. For my eye also has seen my desire, my enemies, my ears hear my desire as well. What is he saying? He says, I am going to be able to witness my defense because God's coming to my aid. The scripture tells us to stand still. They were told to stand still. Stand still and to see the salvation of the Lord. Is that easy to do? Come on. Is that easy to be still? No. It's not. But stand still to see the salvation of the Lord. God is coming to my aid. I want to witness it, and I will witness it, he says. I may be in a battle, but I am not defeated because God is on my side. This confidence to keep my head raised up, knowing whom I have believed, knowing that God is with me, knowing that I can stand. The latter verses here of this chapter really are just flowing with positive expressions. Verse 12, the righteous shall flourish like a palm tree. He shall grow like a cedar of Lebanon. Righteousness exalts. Does not the word tells us righteousness exalts a nation? Righteousness exalts a people. And it goes nationally and personally. Righteousness exalts. God's favor is always in sync with those that are aligned with his character. And he's describing it here. Those who are planted in the house of the Lord shall flourish in the courts of our God. I was glad when they said to me, let us go to the house of the Lord. One who trusts in God and desires the house of God and desires to come to his place and gain what we need to gain in our lives, and be reminded of the greatness of God. Because what we gain from the inside enables us to live on the outside. What we learn from his word, what we gain in our worship, and the songs and the music and the praying and the giving of scriptures and all that is pertaining to it, it is what enables us to go face a world that is fighting against God, to go face a world that it seems like wickedness and evil is succeeding, but yet in God we can go forth. We are planted in the house of the Lord so that we can flourish in the courts of our God. You see, God's not fighting against us. He is fighting for us. He is championing my good. It is all about my benefit. And when the psalmist is expressing here, he is seeing this very aspect. God, it's a good thing to give thanks to the Lord. Because, God, you have been my defense. You have been my help. You will be exalted, and I want to be a part of the exaltation. And so, God, I'm joining with you in this. Whew. It's a good thing. Verse 14 says, they shall bear fruit in old age. Some of you ought to feel good about that. They shall still bear fruit in old age. They shall be fresh and flourishing. You know what? God doesn't bench us because of our age. He just adjusts our usefulness. He's like, well, I can't do things as I used to. No, but he has another place for you. He has another opportunity for you to do. So that even when you're old and gray and decrepit and crippled, you can still be of use. You can pray, you can encourage, you can build, you can enrich the lives of others that are on the forefront and in the battle. I'm thankful for that. He prospers us to produce where we can and what we can and when we can. It's God. He has no boundaries, no limits that confine him. Verse 15. To declare that the Lord is upright, he is my rock, and there is no unrighteousness in him. This steadfastness of God is the assurance that he is my anchor and my firm foundation. You can stand on him. He is my constant. He is my compass. He is my mirror and my truth. Why should I hold back in giving him praise? Why should my voice be silent when I know the God that I serve abides within me? Should not we be singing it? Should not we be playing it? Should we not be rejoicing in this great God? How can I not but exalt him? Because he's been so good. I believe the psalmist is absolutely right. It is a good thing to give thanks to the Lord. It is a good thing to sing praises to his name. It is a good thing to make known to all creation that our God reigns. It is a good thing to testify to this goodness and greatness of God. It is a good thing to live out praise before all men, not just in the sanctuary, but outside of the four walls of our blessing here. We live to exalt him. It's a good thing to be thankful. It's a good thing to give praise to the Lord. Let's stand together.